realise. It's purely that simple. As Jacques Fresco has said in the past, if we do nothing, then I guarantee you nothing will happen. The Zeitgeist movement is here as a pillow, or a buffer, if you will, to the biosocial pressures that you will see growing all over the world during the collapse, to offer a way out. The reassurance that life doesn't have to be like this, to provide information, and through that information, hopefully the motivation to actually bring these ideas to fruition. Personally, I see the act of having families in an unstable future as a rather selfish and arrogant action anyway. A lot of people tell me that they have kids because they want to give this kid the life I couldn't have. Well, how can people do that with the obvious signs of societal, economic and ecological collapse all around them? How can you justify that? From time to time I speak to parents about this direction, and it completely amazes me and astounds me that as parents they have no interest in the future, which, is tragically ironic considering how they have chosen to have children, being the future of their existing family, not to mention the cliched notion, our children are our future! And yet they don't even care about the kind of world that they are willingly ushering their children towards. As far as I'm concerned, those of you listening to this that happen to be a parent, then listen up. You are the most responsible among us. You are the ones who have even more reason to do something about the world we have and to push for a change. Do you know why? Because you have chosen to become a parent. It is your duty as a parent to ensure your child has actually been brought into this world for a good reason. And no, carrying on your family name or wanting more child benefit doesn't count. As I mentioned a minute ago, people tell me because I want my child to have the life I couldn't have. Well, that isn't limited to making sure your child is educated and well-mannered, but it also includes ensuring that you have done what you can to affect the environment that your child is inheriting. It's pure common sense, sorry. Some parents have even gone as far as to tell me, I'll be dead before anything gets too bad. What? What about your children? Do you even care about what kind of world you're sending them into? And yes, I'm sure it serves you to have this mentality, but every single generation before you has had this same mentality. That is why we're in such a bad state today, because the apathy is continuously taught further and further down the line, and eventually we have all arrived at this generation. Well, possibly the next generation that has to suffer this. The generation that has inherited the complete and total collapse of the entire global monetary system. Well done, guys. You've passed the buck well. Maybe when you notice all the crap we have to deal with in our lives, and when we realise that it has all been made possible by the apathy of those who came before us, not to do anything about it, we can see an accurate view of what can actually be done. With that in mind, why perpetuate the BS? You see my point. But as for the latter part of your question, what is being offered is the proposal of a shift in value systems towards the alignment with natural law, and the implementation of automated resource management so that people will arrive at decisions as opposed to making them. And this, in part, will render the idea of government completely obsolete, and hence it will be shed, along with all the other BS that we've been taught is mandatory and or necessary. Not that governments are already obsolete, but it's just the further they try to govern, the more they show themselves up as such. Okay, question 5. If automation is a key component of the movement, what aspirations does it leave humankind with, or is that the point of that? Freedom being the imperative thing? Okay, this is in part an incentive question. I have already addressed this in my Dispelling Myths podcast, so if you want to know what I've said about that, then go look up my Dispelling Myths podcast. I think it's probably the second or third question. But of course, freedom is the imperative thing, of course. But when I say that, I mean true freedom. I mean, none of this democracy crap that bans around the world freedom because the population aren't held in a blatantly oppressive and stratified system. I mean, that kind of oppression and stratification is actually starting to come out more and more. If you look at any of the videos of some of the recent protests, just in the UK even, and you see the videos actually made by some of the people that are caught up in the middle of those sort of things, then you will see that we are starting to move towards a very fascist police state. But because it isn't blatantly in the face of everyone, people think that we don't. We don't live in an oppressive system. We believe that we have this freedom. But what I mean is complete freedom to do what you want, to go where you want, and be what you want. The only constraints that humanity will have is the very constraints of nature, which, by the way, are non-negotiable. For example, you're not free to expect to walk off the edge of a cliff and not to plummet to your death or to very severe injury. The natural law of gravity does not care what you want. But that's the point. Natural laws are the only laws and constraints that should apply to human beings anyway. Well, that and common law, but I'm not going to go into that. Maybe in a future podcast. When it comes to what aspirations humanity is left with, then all you have to do is consider what you would do if you didn't need to worry about money, or having a job, or providing for yourself and your family. Literally, if money was no object, what aspirations you can have and follow is down to you. What interests and activities do you have a passion for? What really inspires you? What makes you feel like you are really accomplishing something without being involved with money? When you think about it from that angle, you may well find that you haven't got enough time to do all the things you want to do. You may find that there are so many things that fill you with joy, free your mind, unwrap your imagination, engage your brain, and give you pleasure, that you will actually find yourself being busy. It will no longer be a case of what aspirations you are left with, but quite the opposite. You will be flooded with options of pursuing aspirations, inspirations, passions. The possibilities are virtually endless. But to show you further proof of this, take some of the wealthiest people on the planet, as aberrant and greedy and elitist as they may be. Can you name one of them that suffers from chronic laziness because they have everything provided for them? Can you name one multi-millionaire or billionaire or trillion... Well, are there any trillionaires on the planet yet? Well, we'll probably see it soon. Can you name me any one of those kind of people who lounges around all day getting fat and stupid, staying in bed till noon and watching Jeremy Kyle? No. The richest people on the planet are in fact some of the busiest people on the planet. Granted, this activity is in part spurred on by their insatiable greed for money and property and the means to acquire it, but mainly they're extremely active because they are not held back by the consideration of money or any of the hoops those with hardly any money at all will have to jump through. If you want to travel abroad, if they want to travel abroad, they don't have to worry about whether they can afford it. They just do it. If they wish to throw a party or charity function, they don't have to be concerned with how much of a hole it's going to burn in their pocket. They just do it. Anyway, question 6. In order to prevent and punish crime, there must still be a justice and legal system. This would require the people to be the police officers and judges, etc. This in itself would give those people a form of power and therefore would make them higher in the system than civilians. Okay, During the transition, of course, there would be a need for some form of law enforcement organisation. However, the difference in the value system proposed is with three main elements. Number one, the reduction in the necessity for the criminal justice system. Now, just to go off just to digress very briefly, this just reminds me of a quote from Dr. Gabor Mate, when he said that yes, I completely agree. The justice system is completely criminal, and it should be viewed as such. But anyway, the reduction in the necessity for the criminal justice system, meaning to reduce the amount of law enforcement required as the scale of crime and inhumanity reduces respectively. What I mean by that is that as we reduce crime, then the need for law enforcement will also be reduced. In other words, our overall goal in this respect is to greatly reduce the need for police, as the shift in values and the access abundance will cause crimes themselves to become more and more scarce, and eventually, being in line with our ultimate goal, crimes will cease to exist altogether. Okay, number two, the shifting of values in respect of justice. Well, first of all, what is justice? Seeing and knowing an individual is going to pay for their misdemeanors? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Well, as Kevin Spacey, as the character Prote in the book and film K-Pax, said that your common policy is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which is seen by the universe for its stupidity. But in our current way of thinking, while they seem poetically and politically honourable, if you don't think past the surface, what do they really accomplish? Nothing. Making someone pay for their crime does not help that person learn from their mistakes. It just perpetuates the retaliation cycle. It certainly doesn't either prohibit similar behaviour in others, let alone address the root cause of why that person decided to commit that crime in the first place, and hence solve the problem at the core. Would that be the true workable definition of justice? To ensure the same thing doesn't happen again? In reality, justice is just another word for revenge, and vengeance never got anyone anywhere. Look what it did to Captain Ahab. But think about this. How many times do we have, as my friend Jim Phillips said in his Z-Day presentation for TZM Education, how many times do we have to hear that the abused become the abusers before we realise and recognise the causal mechanisms? How many James Bulgers have to die in agony before we think to ourselves, wait a minute, maybe we need to start adopting a preventative mentality towards this crime? When are we going to wake up? So far, the supposed justice acquired at the behest of those who commit criminal acts, and how ineffective this practice is, can be quite eloquently summed up in the following quote from the character Archer in the film Scum, which told the story of life in a Borstal prison in the mid-1970s. I don't know if any of you remember it. It's a very, very violent and graphic film. It was banned in 1977 and then remade in 1979 and re-released. And the one thing that's quite interesting is that the remake of it was actually much more graphic. But anyway, the quote is as follows: "How can anyone build a character inside a regime based on deprivation? It's a one-way contamination. Good fine minds thrown in with crazy, perverted people. See, if it's not a screw at me, it's a con. Well, in here